It was supposed to be just dinner, a quiet night out with my husband, a rare Friday when we both weren't too tired to pretend to be happy. But the way he smiled across the table, it didn't match his eyes. And 5 minutes later, I realized why. My name is Leah Carson, and I still remember every detail of that evening at Giovanni's Trattoria. The smell of garlic and fresh basil floating through the air, the clinking of glasses, the low hum of jazz in the background. It was the kind of restaurant where couples whispered over candlelight and waiters moved like shadows. Romantic, perfect, or at least, that's what Adam wanted it to look like. He ordered for both of us without asking what I wanted. He always did that when he wanted control disguised as care. "The house special for my wife," he told the waiter, his hand resting a little too tightly over mine. That grip, warm on the surface but sharp underneath, felt like a quiet warning no one else could hear. I smiled like a good wife should. "That sounds lovely," I said, my voice softer than my heart felt. In reality, my appetite had already started slipping away. Not because of the food, but because something about that night didn't taste right before the first bite even came. The waiter, young, dark hair, kind eyes, glanced at me twice. Once when Adam reached for the wine, and once when I tried to pull my wrist back. Our eyes met for just a second, and I saw something there. Concern, recognition, maybe even fear. I tried to brush it off. Maybe I was being dramatic, or maybe this was just what marriage had become, pretending you didn't notice when love started to feel like a performance. I looked down at the white tablecloth, at the fork shining under the candlelight, at the reflection of a woman who looked calm but wasn't. Adam talked about work, clients and contracts, as well as things that didn't matter. I nodded, smiled, and asked small questions. That's what you do when your husband likes the sound of his own voice. That's what you do when silence feels dangerous. Then dessert came. Tiramisu, his favorite, not mine. The waiter returned, balancing a silver tray with 2 plates. His name tag read Miles. When he placed the dessert down, his hand brushed the edge of my napkin. It wasn't clumsy. It was intentional. Something light, folded, slipped under the napkin near my plate. I froze. Adam didn't notice. He was too busy swirling his wine, too busy watching his reflection in the glass. Miles straightened up, his face blank, but his eyes. They said everything. He looked at me like someone who had just made a choice that scared him. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the blur of candlelight and music. I swallowed hard, pretending to adjust my napkin. Underneath, my fingers brushed against paper, a small folded note. My hands were shaking before I even opened it. Inside, written in quick, hurried letters, were just 5 words. "Please read this when you're alone." The restaurant noise faded. My heart started pounding so loudly I could feel it in my throat. I forced a smile as Adam raised his glass again. "To new beginnings," he said, his eyes sharp and unreadable. I raised mine too, trying not to look at the napkin hiding in my lap. The candlelight flickered across his face, and for the first time that night, I realized something I hadn't dared to think before. This wasn't just dinner. Something else was unfolding, something dangerous, and I was right in the middle of it. My fingers trembled as I lifted the napkin from my lap. The folded paper underneath felt weightless, but it carried a heaviness I could already feel in my chest. I glanced at Adam. He was smiling at his phone, scrolling through messages that, apparently, were more interesting than his wife sitting across from him. Good. He wasn't watching. I unfolded the paper slowly, careful not to make a sound. The note was short, only 6 words. "You are not safe. Leave quietly." For a second, I forgot how to breathe. My heartbeat filled my ears, loud and uneven. I read it again, thinking maybe I'd misunderstood. But the words were clear, rushed, written by someone who didn't have time to explain. I looked up at the restaurant around us. Couples laughing, silverware clinking. A violinist is playing a slow, romantic piece near the bar. Everything looked normal. Everything sounded normal. But suddenly, nothing felt normal. The glass of wine sitting by my plate looked different now. Not like a drink, like a trap. The deep red shimmered under the candlelight, innocent and dangerous at the same time. Adam's reflection in the wine glass caught my eye. The curve of his mouth, too calm, too rehearsed. The kind of calm people wear when they already know what's about to happen. I forced a laugh I didn't feel. "Excuse me," I said softly. "Restroom." My voice cracked halfway through the word. Adam nodded, distracted, his attention still glued to his phone. That gave me the few seconds I needed. I stood, slipped the note into my purse, and walked toward the hallway at the back. My knees felt weak, like the ground wasn't completely real. The mirror near the restroom caught my reflection. Pale face, wide eyes, shaking hands. I looked like someone standing at the edge of something terrible, about to fall. And behind me, through the reflection, I saw Miles. He was standing near the kitchen doors, half in the shadows, his apron slightly crooked. He raised a hand, not waving, not calling out. He just shook his head slowly once. "Don't go back." That single gesture told me more than any words could. I stepped into the restroom, locked the door, and finally let myself breathe. The cold tile floor grounded me, but my thoughts wouldn't stop racing. What was happening? Why would a stranger warn me? What could I possibly be in danger from, here in a public place, with my own husband sitting just 10 feet away? I took my phone out, thinking I should call someone, maybe Evelyn, my best friend, but my fingers hovered over the screen and froze. If Adam really was part of this, if he'd planned something, calling anyone might tip him off. I turned the phone over and stared at the faint reflection of my face in the black glass. For the first time in a long time, I didn't recognize the woman staring back. When I walked back toward our table, I tried to look normal. One breath in, one breath out. Smile. Keep your steps steady. But as soon as the restaurant came back into view, my heart stopped. Adam's chair was empty. His jacket still hung over the backrest, his glass of wine half full. But he was gone. "Excuse me," I said to a passing waiter, trying to sound casual. "My husband, did he step outside?" The man looked confused. "I'm not sure, ma'am. Maybe the front?" That's when I noticed something else. My purse. The small black bag I'd placed beside my chair earlier. It wasn't there anymore. A cold wave went through me. I turned toward the entrance, scanning every face, every corner. Nothing. Adam had vanished. And so had my purse, my phone, my keys, everything. It didn't make sense. None of it did. But one thing was clear. Whoever had written that note hadn't been mistaken. Something was wrong. Deeply, dangerously wrong. I reached into my coat pocket and felt the paper still there, creased from how tightly I'd been holding it. The words stared back up at me, simple and merciless. "You are not safe. Leave quietly." I looked toward the kitchen again. Miles was standing there, halfway hidden behind a swinging door, his expression tense and urgent. He caught my eye, mouthed a single word, "Go." And that's when I realized this wasn't about dinner anymore. It wasn't even about marriage. It was about survival. His chair was pulled back, the wine glass half full, and for a few seconds I just stood there staring. It felt like I'd stepped into a dream that didn't belong to me. Adam was gone. The restaurant noise carried on, people laughing, forks clinking, but all I could hear was my heartbeat. I looked around, hoping he'd just gone to take a call, but deep down, I already knew this wasn't normal. He never left his phone unattended. He never left me unattended. A waiter approached, the manager this time, kind-faced and polite. "Ma'am, are you all right? Your husband said he'd be right back. He stepped outside for a quick call." I nodded automatically. "Oh, okay, thank you." But my hands were shaking. Something about the way he'd disappeared didn't feel right. I checked my phone, but it wasn't there. My purse was still missing. That meant no phone, no keys, no wallet, no way to call anyone. I tried to steady my breathing and sat back down. The chair felt cold. The air around me is even colder. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw Miles again. He stood near the corner of the room, half hidden behind another table. When our eyes met, he walked toward me slowly, cautiously, like he didn't want to draw attention. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered. His voice trembled. "What's going on?" I whispered back, trying not to move my lips too much. He looked over his shoulder before answering. "Please, just listen to me. Leave now before he comes back." "Before who comes back?" I asked, my pulse quickening. He didn't answer. His jaw tightened instead. "Do you know my husband?" I pressed. Miles hesitated, his eyes flicking down for a moment before meeting mine again. "I saw him here earlier this week," he said quietly. Are you sure? He nodded once. He wasn't alone. My stomach dropped. Who was he with? Miles swallowed hard. A woman. She looked a lot like you. For a moment, I didn't understand. Then it hit me. Another woman. Same restaurant. Same table. Same smile he wore for me tonight. The world tilted a little. My vision blurred at the edges. Why would he come here with someone who looked like me? And what did that have to do with the note? Miles reached into his apron pocket and pulled out a napkin, creased, slightly smudged with coffee. He glanced around once more before sliding it toward me. There's an address on it, he said. You need to see what's there, but go alone. My fingers brushed the napkin, and for a moment I wanted to refuse it. I wanted to believe none of this was happening, that my husband was just outside making a call, that this night was still normal. But deep down, the truth had already started to form, and it scared me more than anything. What is this address? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Miles looked at me with something between pity and fear. You'll understand when you get there, he said. But please don't let him see you first. Before I could say another word, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd of waiters carrying trays and candles and desserts that suddenly all looked the same. I looked down at the napkin. An address, written in quick, uneven letters. And my blood turned cold when I read it. It wasn't some random place. It wasn't a hotel or another restaurant. It was my home. I drove home faster than I should have, my fingers locked so tightly around the steering wheel that they hurt. The city lights blurred past, but I barely noticed. All I could see in my mind was that napkin and the address written on it, my address. Every second behind the wheel felt longer than the last. I kept checking the rearview mirror, half expecting Adam's car to appear, headlights cutting through the dark. But the road behind me stayed empty. When I finally pulled into the driveway, the house looked too quiet. The porch light flickered on by itself, the sensor reacting to my car, but somehow, it felt like the house had been waiting for me. Watching me. I sat there for a minute, engine still running, trying to gather enough courage to step out. The air was cold, still, and heavy with that kind of silence that doesn't feel natural. My home had always been my safe place. That night it didn't feel safe at all. When I reached the front door, my heart skipped. It was slightly open, not wide, just an inch, but enough to see the lock had been forced. A sliver of darkness waited inside. Adam? I called softly. No answer. The only sound was the faint creak of the door as I pushed it open. The lights inside were off, but the faint glow from the street lamp outside spilled across the hallway floor. I stepped inside slowly, one cautious foot at a time. Every detail felt off. The hallway rug was slightly crooked. A drawer in the living room was open, not ransacked, just opened, like someone had been looking for something specific. My wedding photo from the mantel was gone. Only the frame remained. The glass cracked at the corner. I felt my throat tighten. I called again. Adam? Still nothing. No movement, no sound. Just the quiet hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. I turned toward the study. The door was half shut. That's when I heard it, a faint ticking. At first I thought it was a clock, but it wasn't steady. It sounded sharper, mechanical. I stepped closer, my hand shaking as I pushed the door open. The ticking grew louder. The study was in perfect order. Books neatly stacked, lamp turned slightly toward the window. Everything seemed untouched except for the faint red light blinking under the desk. I crouched down slowly. There, hidden beneath the desk lamp, was a small black device, no bigger than my phone. A recorder. Its red light blinked like an accusing eye. I reached out, hesitated, then carefully picked it up. My reflection in the shiny surface looked strange, pale, tired, frightened. I pressed the stop button. The blinking stopped, and the room fell silent again. Why would Adam record me? What was he looking for? I stared at the recorder in my hand, trying to make sense of it all. That's when headlights swept across the window. Bright, sudden, blinding. A car had just pulled into the driveway. My heart jumped into my throat. I ducked behind the desk, my breath coming in short bursts. The engine outside cut off. The silence that followed was worse than any sound. Then came the soft click of a car door. Footsteps. Slow, steady, coming closer to the porch. I gripped the recorder like it could protect me, forcing myself not to make a sound. A shadow moved across the frosted glass of the front door. Whoever it was, they were here. And they weren't knocking. I stayed crouched behind the desk, barely breathing. Through the thin glass of the window, I saw a shadow move past the porch light. Someone was out there. The engine outside went silent, and the only sound left was the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint rustle of wind through the trees. My mind raced. Was it Adam? Had he followed me home? Or was it someone else? Someone who already knew I was alone? I inched toward the window, careful not to make the floorboards creak. When I pulled the curtain back just enough to see, I froze. There was a figure standing by my car, tall, wearing a long coat, too neat for a thief, too unfamiliar to be a neighbor. The porch light flickered once, and I caught the faintest glimpse of his face before the shadows covered it again. He was watching the house. Watching me. I reached into my pocket, forgetting that my phone was still gone. No way to call anyone, no way to run without being seen. Then came 3 soft knocks on the door. Slow, deliberate. Like whoever was out there already knew I was listening. Every muscle in my body tensed. Another knock, then a voice, quiet, hurried, and strangely familiar. "It's Miles," the voice whispered. "Please, open the door." I hesitated, my pulse hammering in my ears. What if it wasn't him? What if this was some kind of trick? "Leah, it's me," the voice said again, a little louder this time. "You're in danger. Let me in." Something in his tone, urgent but genuine, pushed me forward. I unlocked the door with shaking hands. Miles slipped inside quickly, locking it again behind him. His face was pale, eyes darting toward the window. "You shouldn't have come back here," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why?" I asked. "What's happening? What's going on?" He ran a hand through his hair, trying to catch his breath. "Your husband isn't who you think he is," he said. "What are you talking about?" Miles looked at me, his expression torn between anger and pity. "Adam's been under investigation for months," he said. "Fraud, money laundering, and insurance scams. We thought he'd gone quiet, but he didn't. He just changed his methods." I stared at him, the words struggling to sink in. "That's impossible," I said, shaking my head. "Adam's an accountant. He's dangerous, Leah," Miles cut in. "We've been following him since last year. I was sent to get close, to monitor his movements, but tonight wasn't supposed to happen like this." I could barely process what I was hearing. The room felt like it was spinning. "You're saying he tried to, what? Set me up?" Miles hesitated. Then his voice dropped even lower. "He's done this before. Different identities, different women. All of them connected to staged accidents and insurance payouts. The last one, she didn't make it. My knees went weak. I grabbed the edge of the desk to steady myself. "Why are you telling me this now?" I whispered. "Because tonight you were next." The words hit me harder than any scream could have. My mind flashed back to the restaurant, the note, the look in Adam's eyes, the toast he insisted on. "Oh my God," I breathed. "He was going to—" Miles nodded grimly. "That's why I warned you. I couldn't let it happen again." Before I could ask another question, a sharp sound split the silence. A window shattering from the living room. Glass exploded across the floor as a bullet tore through the curtain and buried itself in the wall. Miles grabbed my arm and pulled me down. "Stay low," he shouted. I could smell gunpowder in the air, sharp and terrifying. My heart felt like it might break through my ribs. "Is he out there?" I gasped. Miles didn't answer. He just looked toward the dark window, his jaw tight, his eyes filled with something that chilled me more than fear itself. Certainty. Whoever had fired that shot wasn't just trying to scare us. They were sending a message, and I didn't need anyone to translate it for me. Adam knew I was alive, and he wasn't finished. The sound of glass breaking still echoes in my mind. That single shot felt louder than thunder. Miles pulled me to the floor so fast I barely had time to breathe. "Stay down," he said, his voice sharp but shaking. Bits of glass rained from the window above us, sparkling in the light from the porch. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. All I could hear was my own heartbeat. Then, from outside, came the screech of tires, the sound of a car speeding away. Miles crawled toward the window and peeked out from behind the curtain. "Gone?" he muttered. "He's gone. Was it Adam?" I whispered. He didn't answer, but his expression was enough. He already knew. I stayed crouched behind the desk, my breath shallow. The bullet had hit the wall just inches from the family photo that used to hang there. The picture was cracked, a long line cutting through our smiling faces. Something about that felt cruelly symbolic. Miles pulled his phone from his pocket and started scrolling. I could see text messages glowing on the screen, dozens of them. I leaned closer, reading over his shoulder. Unknown number. She knows. Finish it tonight. My stomach dropped. Is that from him? I asked. Miles nodded. He's been using burner phones for weeks. We couldn't trace him. I felt dizzy. Every sweet word Adam had ever said to me suddenly felt rehearsed. Every romantic gesture, every planned date, it had all been part of something else. Miles, I whispered, my voice breaking. What is happening to me? He looked at me, guilt flickering across his face. I should have told you sooner, he said quietly. I'm not just a waiter. I've been working undercover with Detective Rowan. We've been trying to build a case against Adam. We thought he was done. But tonight proved he's still active and desperate. I shook my head, unable to speak. Everything I believed about my husband was collapsing right in front of me. Then Miles said something that froze my blood completely. Leah, he whispered, Adam planned to make you the next insurance claim. The words hung in the air like smoke. And for the first time that night, I realized the bullet wasn't meant to scare me. It was meant to remind me I was supposed to be dead. I stared at Miles, the room spinning around us. His words echoed in my head. Adam planned to make you the next insurance claim. It didn't sound real. It sounded like something from a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Miles sat beside me on the floor, his voice low and steady. Adam's first wife, he said quietly, died in a house fire. He collected nearly $1 million in life insurance. Same policy. Same company. I felt my breath catch. He told me she died of a gas leak, I whispered. Miles shook his head. There was no leak. It was staged. We've been investigating ever since. My hands started to shake. I thought about all the times Adam mentioned updating our insurance, how casually he'd slid the papers across the counter. Just sign here, babe, he'd said. Standard renewal. I'd signed them without reading, without questioning, without realizing I was signing my own death certificate. Miles reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded document. These were filed last week, he said. Your signature's on them, but it's forged. He laid the papers on the floor in front of me, and my name stared back in ink that wasn't mine. My stomach turned. He was planning to kill me, I said, my voice breaking. Miles nodded slowly. And make it look like an accident. Just like before. I felt tears burn my eyes, but I pushed them back. Why are you helping me? I asked. He hesitated. Because I've seen what he does to people, and I'm not letting it happen again. I sat there, surrounded by broken glass and the smell of fear, realizing my marriage had been nothing but a setup, a lie designed for profit. All the love, the memories, the promises, none of it had been real. Miles looked toward the window, his jaw tight. We have to move him, he said. If he knows you're alive, he'll come back. I grabbed my coat with trembling hands. As we stepped out into the night, one thought pulsed in my head like a heartbeat. If Adam wanted me dead for money, he was about to find out what I'd do to stay alive. We sped through the dark streets, headlights slicing the silence. Miles's phone buzzed on the dashboard. He put it on speaker, his hands gripping the wheel. Rowan, he said quickly. A deep voice answered. Is she safe? I froze. He knew about me, for now, Miles said. He tried to take the shot, but missed. There was a pause. Then the detective's voice grew urgent. Get her out of there. Meet me at the Lakeside Motel, room 12. I'll have backup on the way. The call ended, leaving nothing but the sound of tires on asphalt. Miles kept glancing at the mirror, his eyes sharp and restless. Do you think he's following us? I asked. I'd bet on it, he said. Just keep your head down. My hands were shaking in my lap. I could still feel the heat of that bullet passing too close. Who is Detective Rowan? I asked finally. He's the one running the investigation, Miles said. He's been tracking Adam's financial movements for months. He didn't want to involve you until we had enough proof. When we reached the motel, the neon sign flickered weakly. Half the letters burned out. Miles parked behind the building, away from the main road. Inside, Detective Rowan was already waiting, a tall man in a dark coat, calm but serious. He spread a folder open on the table. Photographs, bank statements, and one picture that made my stomach twist. Adam standing next to a woman I didn't recognize. Her name was written below it, Lydia. Is that his girlfriend? I asked. Rowan shook his head slowly. She's more than that, he said. She's his partner. They run the scams together. Before I could ask more, the detective's radio crackled. A voice came through, sharp and panicked. Subject spotted. Motel parking lot. Miles and I locked eyes. He didn't have to say it. Adam had found us. The moment the radio crackled, my heart dropped. Miles turned off the lamp, plunging the room into a dim orange glow from the parking lot outside. Detective Rowan pulled the curtain back just an inch, his jaw tightening. He's here, he said. I didn't need to ask who. I already knew. Through the slit in the curtain, I saw Adam's silhouette. He was standing near the vending machine, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a phone to his ear. Even from that distance, I could feel the calm menace in his posture, like he'd already decided how this would end. Rowan motioned for silence. Miles reached into his jacket and pulled out a small handgun. It looked too heavy for his shaking hands. Do you know how to use that? I whispered. Enough, he said, though his eyes told me otherwise. I crouched by the side of the bed, my pulse hammering so hard it hurt. The room smelled faintly of coffee and motel air freshener, too clean, too fake. I could hear every breath I took, every tiny sound. Then Adam turned. He looked straight at our window. Even through the glass, his gaze locked onto mine like a spotlight. He didn't move for a moment, he just stared. Then he smiled. Lifting his phone, he mouthed 2 words I'll never forget. Too late. My breath caught. Rowan whispered, Everyone, down. I barely had time to react before the motel lights flickered, then went out completely. The room fell into darkness. Outside, the hum of the street vanished, replaced by the distant crack of footsteps on gravel. Miles gripped my hand, his whisper trembling. He cut the power. In the dark, one truth became clear. Adam wasn't running anymore. He was hunting. The darkness swallowed everything. 1 second, the hum of the lights filled the motel room, and the next, silence took over, thick and alive. My heart was beating so fast I could barely think. Miles gripped my arm, his whisper barely audible. He's here. Detective Rowan moved toward the door, his flashlight low and steady, the beam cutting through the shadows like a blade. The red exit sign at the end of the hallway flickered weakly, casting the corridor in a dull, eerie glow. Then came the sound, soft at first, like fabric brushing against a wall. Someone was moving outside, slow, purposeful. Rowan motioned for us to stay put, but before he could reach the door, a faint hiss came from the air vent above us. A thin stream of gray smoke curled out, snaking into the air like a ghost. Get down! He shouted, but it was already too late. The smoke thickened fast, filling the room with the smell of burning wires. The fire alarm shrieked, the sound sharp and relentless. My lungs burned with every breath. Miles grabbed my hand, coughing hard. We have to go, now! We stumbled into the hallway, choking on the smoke. Flames were already crawling along the ceiling, glowing an unnatural shade of blue. The sprinklers hadn't gone off. They'd been disabled. I realized what that meant. This wasn't an accident. It was a setup, just like the others. Rowan pushed open the emergency door, shouting into his radio for backup. The cold night air hit my face as we burst outside. Behind us, the motel windows glowed bright, one after another, until the entire building looked like it was burning from the inside out. I turned back once, watching the flames reflect off the wet pavement. The smell of gasoline hung in the air. He's repeating the same plan, I whispered, my voice shaking. Miles coughed beside me, his eyes red from the smoke. He wanted us inside when it went off. Rowan's phone buzzed in his hand. Fire department's on the way, he said, then looked at us grimly. Adam's car was spotted leaving the lot 5 minutes ago. He's gone. I stared at the rising blue fire, the kind that didn't just destroy, it erased. Adam had vanished again, but something deep inside me knew this wasn't over. The truth was still burning, and before it was done, I was going to face him. By the next morning, the motel was nothing but blackened walls and ashes that smelled of gasoline and smoke. Firefighters moved through the wreckage like ghosts, their flashlights cutting through the haze. I stood behind the yellow tape, wrapped in a blanket someone had given me, but no warmth could reach me. Miles was on the phone talking to Detective Rowan, his voice low and tense. "They said he'd left something behind," he murmured, covering the speaker. "A name, written on the wall before the fire spread." I turned to him sharply. "Whose name?" He hesitated. "Lena." For a moment, everything stopped. Lena, my best friend since college. The one who vanished 3 years ago without a trace. The one the police said probably ran away. I felt the blood drain from my face. "That's impossible," I whispered. "Lena's gone." Miles looked at me with the same disbelief I felt inside. "That's what I thought too," he said quietly. "But Rowan says the handwriting matches Adam's, and they found her old locket in the ashes." My knees went weak. Memories flashed in sharp bursts, Lena laughing in my kitchen, her promise that she'd always have my back, and the last voicemail she left before disappearing. "If anything happens, don't trust him." I'd always assumed she meant her boyfriend. Now I wasn't so sure. Detective Rowan arrived moments later, soot still on his jacket. He handed me a small plastic evidence bag. Inside was the locket, tarnished, half-burned, but unmistakably Lena's. "We think she's connected to Adam," Rowan said. "We found photos of her in his files, dated after she went missing." I stared at the locket, the metal cold against my skin, even through the plastic. "She tried to warn me," I said, my voice breaking. "All this time she was trying to warn me." Miles reached for my hand. "We'll find her," he said. But deep down, I wasn't sure if we were searching for a living friend, or her ghost. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the locket glinting in the flames, as if it was calling out from the past. Miles was in the next room, talking to Rowan again. Their voices were low, urgent. I sat on the motel's edge-of-town bed, clutching my phone. I had one message left from Lena, an old voicemail I'd never deleted. For years, I couldn't bring myself to listen to it again. But now, I had to know if I'd missed something. With trembling hands, I pressed play. Her voice filled the room, soft but edged with fear. "Hey, it's me. I don't have much time. If you're hearing this, something went wrong. Don't trust him. He's not who he says he is." Then there was a pause, a faint sound in the background, like a door creaking. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "He found out about the photos. If anything happens, check the cabin." The recording cut off mid-sentence, followed by static. My heart pounded as I replayed it, over and over, trying to catch the last word. The cabin. Which cabin? There was only one place she could have meant, her family's old lake house 2 hours north. We'd gone there every summer when we were younger. I hadn't been there since before she disappeared. When I told Rowan, his reaction was immediate. "If she mentioned that place, it's important." "Adam might have gone there." Miles frowned. "Or he's still there." We left before sunrise. The road wound through miles of forest, fog hanging low and pale across the trees. Every turn made my stomach twist tighter. I couldn't tell if I was chasing answers or walking straight into the trap Lena never escaped. When we finally reached the dirt path leading to the lake, I saw it, the outline of the old cabin, half hidden in the mist. The front door was slightly open, creaking in the wind. Rowan killed the engine. "Stay behind me," he said quietly. But I already knew. I wasn't leaving until I heard Lena's voice again. The air around the lake felt heavy, thick with silence. Mist rolled over the water, curling around the trees like smoke. I stepped out of the car slowly, every sound amplified, the crunch of gravel, the creak of the cabin door moving with the wind. It looked abandoned, but something about it felt watched. Detective Rowan led the way, flashlight cutting through the dim gray light. Miles stayed close beside me, his eyes scanning every shadow. The door groaned as Rowan pushed it open, revealing a room frozen in time. Dusty furniture, yellowed curtains, and a faint smell of damp wood. But there was something else too. A scent that didn't belong. Gasoline. "Someone's been here recently," Rowan murmured. He moved toward the corner where an old record player sat on a table. "What's this?" he said, lifting a small black device, one that didn't exist the last time I was here. A recorder. He pressed play. For a moment, there was only static. Then a voice, Lena's, weak but clear. "If you're hearing this, I didn't make it out. Adam's not alone." A crash interrupted her words, then silence. My throat tightened. "Stop it," I said, but my voice cracked. Rowan turned it off, his expression grim. Miles looked toward the back of the cabin. There's more, he said quietly. On the wall, written in faint, chalky lines, were numbers, coordinates, scrawled in shaky handwriting. Rowan bent down to read them. These lead somewhere, he said. Not far from here. Before we could move, the floor creaked behind us. A shadow passed by the window, slow, deliberate. I froze. Miles pulled me back, whispering, "Someone's outside." The door slammed shut. The lock clicked, and then a voice I knew too well spoke from the dark. "Miss me, sweetheart?" "Adam!" The sound of his voice froze me where I stood. I didn't even have to see his face to know it was him. Adam, my husband. My nightmare. He stepped out of the shadows, the faint glow of the flashlight catching his features just enough to show the smile I once thought meant safety. Now it looked like something carved out of malice. "Leah," he said softly, like we were back at dinner, like none of this had happened. "You shouldn't have come here." His tone was calm, steady, almost rehearsed. I took a step back, bumping into Miles, who already had his hand on his gun. Detective Rowan aimed his flashlight at Adam's chest. "Don't move," he ordered. But Adam didn't listen. He just laughed, that low, confident sound that used to charm boardrooms and family gatherings alike. "You still don't get it, do you?" he said. "Everything I did was for us. For a future you were too blind to see. Us?" I snapped, my voice breaking. "You tried to kill me!" He tilted his head, feigning surprise. "Kill you? No, sweetheart. I was setting you free. Free from the lies, from the pain." Rowan moved closer, gun steady. "You're done, Adam. It's over." But Adam didn't even flinch. His eyes darted toward the table, and before anyone could react, he grabbed a lighter from it and flicked it on. The tiny flame danced in his reflection as he smiled wider. "You always loved firelight, Leah," he whispered. "Too bad it'll be the last thing you see." Miles lunged forward. The lighter fell, sparking against the wood. A rush of blue flame burst upward, lighting Adam's face in a demonic glow. Rowan shouted for him to drop it, but Adam only laughed harder. "You can't stop what's already burning," he said. The fire spread fast, crawling across the floorboards like a living thing. Miles pulled me toward the door as smoke thickened the air. Behind us, Adam's laughter turned into coughing, but his voice still carried through the crackle of flames. "This isn't over, Leah," he yelled, and as Rowan kicked open the door and we stumbled out into the night, I wasn't sure if he was right. By morning, the cabin was nothing but a skeleton, charred wood, broken glass, and the faint hiss of smoke rising against the dawn. Fire crews were still packing up when Detective Rowan walked toward me, his face lined with exhaustion. "We found him," he said quietly. "Adam's alive, but barely. He's under arrest." For a moment I didn't speak. The words didn't bring the relief I thought they would. They just left a hollow ache, the kind that comes after too much fear for too long. Miles stood beside me, his jacket draped around my shoulders. "It's over," he said softly. But part of me knew it wasn't. Not completely. The scars Adam left weren't the kind the law could heal. Later, at the station, Rowan showed me a small black box, another recorder pulled from the ashes. "You should hear this," he said. The tape clicked, and Adam's voice filled the room. "If this goes wrong, the blame dies with me." No one ever really knows who anyone is, do they, Leah? I turned it off halfway through. I didn't need to hear anymore. That night, I sat alone on my porch, the air still smelling faintly of smoke. For the first time in months, I wasn't running, hiding, or questioning my sanity. I was just breathing. Free. When morning came, I went back to the same cafe where everything had started, the one where a waiter had once slipped me a note that changed my life. I ordered coffee, and when the cup arrived, I slid a napkin beneath it. On it, I wrote 6 words. Sometimes warnings save the living too. Then I smiled, left it there, and walked out into the sunlight. Some stories end in fire. Mine began again in the ashes. If you felt this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real-life stories of survival, truth, and second chances. Your support helps bring more voices like Leah's to life.